Okay, so what is post-traditional society? It's important to understand this concept to understand what Giddens is talking about. So, when we've got a very traditional society, no one has to think about anything because it is, again, the ant hill, okay? The ants have their set routine, they go into the hill, they do their job, and then, they leave. There's no kind of question about it. It doesn't mean that people don't think about it, but it's in this traditional society, it's generally accepted that you don't really do anything about it, which is why I go back to the 60s as a time where people were really protesting and challenging these ideas about, sexuality, the government, war, protesting for peace, all that kind of thing. So, in a post traditional time, it doesn't really matter what happened in previous generations because people can question it, okay? That's part of the joys of being in a democracy. And so society becomes much more reflexive and aware of itself. So basically, to be reflexive is to be a considerate human being. So you think about stuff and you recognize that things are constructed. You recognize that, your reality isn't really a reality, and you recognize that the state that you're operating in is also a construct, much like the intertextual media texts, okay? So we've talked a little bit about self-reflexive texts where they're aware that they are a media text, much like Family Guy or The Simpsons. They will make a reference to the fact that they are a TV show. So this is now thinking about society itself and the products that we produce in society and the things that we talk about. We're aware the fact that if everyone just said no tomorrow and refused to work and refused to go to school, the society would collapse. Think about I don't know if you hear in London about the amount of people who strike on the trains. Now, when they strike, the whole world stops, but London stops because they have that power. They know, okay, that the London transport is a precariously constructed state. It's very, very fragile. And if they decide that they want to strike and stop the whole of London from working, then they can, and they have this week actually. So Giddens is really fascinated by this. All aspects of society are starting to become more reflexive. So we're starting to think more and talk more about the state that we're in with these situations. So there's more conversation about sexuality. There's more conversation between government and listening to the people who vote for them. And so this idea of modernity is basically post-traditional. Okay, so we've moved away from traditional society. We're now in the aftermath or the after bit of a traditional society, and that is called modernity. So it's basically like modernism. It's just a complicated way of saying that we're living in a modern society. And what he's saying is that society can't be fully modern if we're still doing stuff that's influenced by tradition. Because every time that we go back to traditions, that's what deference means, okay? So every time you go back to tradition, just because people did in the past, is the complete opposite of being an actual thoughtful, reflective, self-aware human being, or in this case, we're going to stop being a self-aware society. And because of that, he's saying that societies that try and do the kind of superficial, flowery version of modernizing, it doesn't work, okay? Because you've got to move everything on. You can't just say, oh, well, we've challenged sexism, so, okay, we've done our bit now, and now we're in a modern society. No, he's saying that you've got to have everyone on the same page saying, right, okay, we're going to discuss gender inequality, we're going to discuss poverty, we're going to discuss the issues with the environment, and we're going to really think about it, and we're going to have a real move forward with it, and then we can be a successful modern society. So that's why countries that are still ruled by dictators who are traditional dictators, South Korea, Zimbabwe, China, Russia, they never worked because they were still stuck in this idea of tradition, especially to do with like gender roles. Okay, so that is the post-traditional society.